morning. We have learned several lectures ago that the universe is filled with a radiation, and we refer to this radiation as the cosmic microwave background radiation, CMBR. Today we shall revisit the cosmic microwave background radiation. To briefly recapitulate the FIRAS experiment on board the satellite Kobe, the final results from the FIRAS experiment on board the satellite Kobe indicate that the temperature of this is this radiation is very well described by a black body spectrum with temperature present temperature 2.725 Kelvin plus minus, that is the error bar 0.002 Kelvin, and this is 95% confidence level. So, at the 95% confidence level, the CMBR temperature, CMBR is a black body with this temperature in this range, and just to give you the numbers again, we had calculated the energy density, the density parameter in this CMBR, and it is 2.47 10 to the power minus 5 H minus 2, and the total density parameter in radiation is 4.15 into 10 to the power minus 5 H minus 2. This is assuming 3 neutrino species, 3 massless neutrinos. Right, and we have discussed this in considerable detail. This is just to recapitulate, give you the basic figures. Now, we have been discussing nucleosynthesis, and we saw that this nucleosynthesis roughly by a temperature of around 10 to the power 9, it is more or less in place. So, after a temperature drops somewhat below 10 to the power 9, nucleosynthesis has occurred, and we are primarily left with CMBR photons. So, we have the CMBR. Its temperature, it is no longer microwave at that temperature, it is the peak has shifted somewhere else definitely, but we have this radiation, and in addition to that we have the protons, that is the hydrogen nuclei, we have He helium 4, and we have the electrons. Primarily this, there were small traces of other things also, but we have primarily this, and the whole thing is in thermal equilibrium, chemical thermal and thermal equilibrium. These are all charged, and the photons undergo scattering, these electrons themselves undergo scattering, they also scatter, the protons and the helium 4 also scatter with the electrons amongst themselves. So, the whole thing is in thermal equilibrium. Now, as it cools, what happens is when at the, okay, now today we shall be interested in a process called recombination. This term itself is a little bit of a misnomer. So, recombination refers to the process referred to here is as the temperature falls. At a certain temperature, the helium and the electrons are going to combine to form the helium atom. Now, the helium has a higher binding energy than the hydrogen. So, there are two things that are going to form. What is going to form is that the ions, okay, essentially this refers to the ions and electrons combining to form the atoms, neutral. Okay, so, as the temperature falls, the atoms all have binding energy. So, it is only when the temperature falls below the binding energy that the atoms will be formed. Okay. And it is called recombination, but actually it should be combination, because that is the first time in the history of the universe that these atoms are formed. Okay. But it has been given the name for historical reasons, recombination, but you should bear in mind that we are actually looking at the first time in the history of the universe. So, the universe started off at a very high temperature, hot phase, and as it expands the temperature falls, it cools. As it cools, first you have the nuclei forming, and then as it cools further, the temperature falls below the binding energy of atoms, then the ions and the electrons, they combine and they give you the atoms. Okay? And this is what is called recombination. For the first time these are combining to form the atoms. So, this is the process that we shall be interested in today. Now, helium 4 has a higher binding energy than hydrogen, considerably higher. So, helium 4 atoms are formed first. We shall be primarily interested in the combination of proton and electron to form the hydrogen atom. This occurs later. Okay. So, at temperatures T below 4000 Kelvin, which is where we shall be interested in, the helium atoms, the helium ions and electrons have all combined, and the helium He4 does not play any role anymore. Once the helium atom is formed, it becomes a neutral particle. Now, the neutral particle, so we have a helium atom formed. The neutral particle, we have the radiation. The neutral particles do not scatter radiation directly. The neutral particle can only scatter radiation, interact with radiation if there is a excitation. So, the electrons may go from the ground state to the first excited state, second, but those energies are much higher. Okay. So, essentially they do not interact directly with the radiation, they scatter with the protons and electrons, but they are no longer directly coupled to the radiation. Okay. And they are there, but they are just passive and they do not play a very important role in this process that we are interested in right now. So, we are considering a situation where there are protons and electrons, and these combine to give the, so we have protons and we have electrons, and these combine to form the hydrogen atom, and there will be some radiation emitted in this process. So, this reaction can occur both ways, but we are interested in how these two go and combine to form the hydrogen atom. Okay. Now, we are interested, so final state of the hydrogen atom is going to be the 1s, the 1s state. Okay. That is the ground state of hydrogen atom. So, we are interested in the hydrogen atom in the ground state. This is the 1s, we all know this. It has spin, it has no angular momentum, and it is in the n equal to 1 state. I am sure all of us are familiar with this. That is the ground state of hydrogen atom. In the ground state of hydrogen atom, let me just, we have already discussed this. The ground state of hydrogen atom has a hyperfine splitting. There is electron and there is a proton. Now both of them have spins, and when the spins are aligned, the energy is slightly higher. Okay. When the spins are opposite, the energy is slightly lower. So there is a hyperfine splitting, and as a consequence there are 4 possible states, 4 different spin states. Okay. 4 spin states. So this has got 3 spin states, and when the one where they are aligned, oppositely aligned, that has got only a single spin state. So there are totally 4 spin states. Okay. Whereas the electron, and the positron are spin half particles, so we know that they have 2 spin states. Now we have already discussed how to determine the ratios of these number densities of these things. We have already discussed this in the context of nuclear reaction. So when this is in thermal equilibrium, the number density of this in each state is given by the Maxwell-Boltzmann distribution. Total number density you can get by integrating over momentum. Similarly for this, similarly for this. You have to also put in the spin states available. Now the chemical potentials are unknown, but in thermal and chemical equilibrium the temperature will be the same. The chemical potential of this plus the chemical potential of this is going to be equal to the chemical potential of this. We have already discussed this. The photons have no chemical potential, 0, okay, because they can be destroyed and created. So based on this we could straight away write down, and I have told you that this is going to be important later on. So we can write down the ratio of the number densities of these different states. So we have the number density of the 1s state divided by the number density of proton, the number density of electron. This ratio, the chemical potential, will cancel out. I have mentioned this earlier, and this is going to be equal to there will be the spin states corresponding to this in the numerator, spin states corresponding to product of spin states corresponding to these two in the denominator, but this is 4 and the denominator is also 4, each of them have spin states 2, so that factor cancels out. Okay, so what we are left with finally is this will be equal to the mass of the electron into Kb into the temperature divided by 2 pi h cross square to the power of minus 3 by 2. In the earlier formula, this 2 pi was in the numerator because we had not used h cross, we had used h. So there is a factor of 2 pi. Okay, that is not a. And then you had this factor exponential binding energy by kT, where the binding energy is the energy difference. So the hydrogen atom has a lower energy than the free electron and proton. Okay, and that is the binding energy. We know that the binding energy for a hydrogen atom is 13 point. We know that this has value 13.6 electron volts. Okay. Now, in addition to the 1s state, you could also have the higher states like 2s and 2p. and various other higher states. Okay. But what happens is that the binding energy of those is smaller, right. The binding energy of those is smaller. So, the number densities, the abundances of those is suppressed, is considerably suppressed at the temperatures of our interest. Okay. So, at the temperatures of our interest, these the relative number densities of those states is much suppressed. Okay. And the ground state, you will only the ground state is considerably populated. The other excited states, they are at temperatures of around 4200 Kelvin. At these temperatures are somewhat smaller than these. At temperatures smaller than these, it is only the ground state that is going to be substantially populated. Okay. So, we now would like to calculate this, and what we are interested in is how the neutral fraction or the ionization fraction proceeds as the universe expands. That is what we are interested in. So, the question of our interest, we want to study the recombination of proton and electron to form the hydrogen atom, and this essentially occurs by the formation of excited states. So, the electron actually combines with the proton to form an excited state of the hydrogen atom, and then it cascades down to the ground state. Okay. Typically, this is how it occurs. So, the electron first does not directly go to the ground state, it goes to it forms an excited state of the hydrogen atom, and then it cascades down to the ground state. Okay. So, we would now like to calculate, the whole thing is in thermal equilibrium. So, the exact process behind it is not all that important. If it is in thermal equilibrium, as long as there is a process, these formulas hold. Okay. So, this is what we would like to calculate. Now, let me go through the calculation. So, we know that the So, we have learned that approximately 75% of all the baryons by weight is in the hydrogen, is in protons, right. So, the number density of protons and number density of particles in the spin ones, the ground state of the hydrogen atom, the sum of these two is going to be number density of all baryons. 3/4 is in this. Okay, it's in the protons. We have learned this from the nucleosynthesis. So, we know this, and the ionization fraction X is the fraction in the proton divided by the total. Also, from charge neutrality, we know that the number density of protons and the number density of electrons is the same. Okay. So, number density of protons and number density of electrons has to be same from charge neutrality. The whole thing is charge neutral. Okay. Now, the ionization fraction satisfies a relation which is like this. Let me write down the relation. It is x square s plus x is equal to 1. Okay. So, this is how Meghnad Saha expressed the ionization fraction, and this is called the Saha ionization formula. Okay, Saha ionization. So, Saha ionization equation essentially uses this and expresses the ionization fraction in this way, where S, the factor S, we have to determine what the factor S is. So we know that the ionization fraction, so we know that this is, this factor over here is Np square by Np plus N1s square into S plus Np by Np plus N1s, and this should be equal to 1. So it is very clear from this what this S should be. This S over here is equal to Np plus N1s square, Np plus number density of proton square into N1s. Right. So the ionization fraction, all that is done is that the ionization fraction is essentially expressed in terms of this fact, of this quantity S, and this quantity S we can calculate, so using the fact that the sum of these two is 0.754, 0.74 into the number density of baryons, that the numerator is this, the term, the number density of ground state hydrogen atom divided by the number density of proton square is essentially this, because these two are the same from charge neutrality. So what we have is that this is equal to this factor into Me kBt by 2 pi h cross square minus 3 by 2 exponential the binding energy by kBt. Okay, so once you calculate this S, you can calculate the ionization fraction straight away. Now this binding energy by Kb, that is the binding energy 13.6 electron volts. If I divide it by the Boltzmann constant, it gives me a temperature, and the temperature is 157,894 Kelvin. And you would expect that the ionization fraction would fall, or the ground state would be considerably occupied once the temperature falls below this value. So you would expect that once the temperature falls below this value, this number would become substantial. This term would be large. Once the temperature falls below this number would be substantial, and S would be large. Once S is large, X has to be small. Okay, once S is large, once this S is large, then X has to be small. Okay, because this sum has to be equal to 1. But what happens is that this doesn't really hold. It doesn't really work like that. The reason why it doesn't work like that, will be obvious if you write this, the numbers, the numerical values corresponding to this. Okay, so let me do that. So if you write out this, if you put in the values, we know that the baryon number density is the present baryon number density into a to the power minus 3. So at any redshift, number density into a cube is a constant. So at any temperature or equivalently redshift, the number density of baryon is the present value divided by T by D naught. T naught is the present value of the temperature to the power 3. It goes up. Okay, so we plug this in here, and you can express the present value of the baryon number density in terms of omega baryon. This we have discussed. So finally what we have is that S is equal to So we have this, we have this overall factor, exponential 157, this factor over here, the binding energy by the temperature, and then we have T to the power 3 by 2 where this T should be in Kelvin. Okay, this T should be in Kelvin, and we have omega baryon H square. This will give us this number S, which is dimensionless, provided T is in Kelvin. The point is that the factor over here is extremely small, and as a consequence this S does not pick up a significant value till much lower temperatures. So once this crosses this value, it becomes of order unity, but this number is so large that you require a small value of T for this S to be significant. So essentially the low number density of baryons, the low number density of particles ensures that the ionization state continues till a much higher temperature than what you would expect. Okay, the low number density, and it is only till temperatures of around 4000 Kelvin. So it crosses, once it crosses 4000 Kelvin that okay. So the values of the ionization fraction based on this formula have been calculated and tabulated over here. So the values of the ionization fraction have been calculated and they have been one second. Yeah, you should look at these values here. These are the values of the ionization fraction as a function of temperature. They have been calculated and tabulated as a function of omega baryon H. Different omega baryon value will give you different ionization fraction at same temperature. Okay. So the point to note over here is that there is a temperature where there is a sharp drop in the ionization fraction. Okay, there is a temperature. For example, let me give you an example. So if you are it falls by 99% if you are dealing with omega baryon H square equal to 0.2. It is 99% that ionization fraction at 4200 Kelvin, and it falls to less than 1% at 3000 Kelvin. So there is a pretty sharp drop in the ionization fraction over here. Okay. So there is a sharp drop in the ionization fraction as it cools, and this occurs somewhere between 3000 and 4000 Kelvin. Okay. Now there are certain caveats, and I should tell you this. The main thing is that as this assumes thermal equilibrium, and as it proceeds, the number density of neutrons and protons, electrons and protons falls. We are interested in a particular reaction where electrons and protons combine to give the hydrogen atom. Now as the reaction proceeds, the number density of neutrons, electrons and protons falls, and as the number density of electrons and protons fall, what happens is this whole thing goes out of equilibrium. So towards the end stages of recombination, so end stages of recombination, that is, or at low ionization, this whole thing goes out of equilibrium. So the predictions of this Saha ionization formula are correct at high ionization, at the high ionization end, but it really does not make correct predictions when the ionization becomes low. Once it falls, these predictions are no longer precise. They give an order of magnitude prediction which are correct at the order of magnitude level, but they are not precise, and precise predictions are required. So these are sufficient only when the ionization is high. Okay. And for this it is necessary to now, we shall go into a slight discussion of how this recombination takes place. Okay. Now the first thing is that if the electron goes directly to 1s, from a free electron goes to the 1s state, this does not really contribute to the recombination process, because the photon that is emitted, so the photon that comes out has sufficient energy to ionize another atom. Okay. So if an electron goes to the 1s state, it just goes and ionizes another one. So one goes down, the other one is excited. Okay. So there is nothing, a neutral atom which is already recombined is ionized. Okay. So this does not really contribute much. Similarly, if it goes from n equal to, let us say, some greater than 3 to 1s state, the photon that comes out can go and excite another hydrogen atom which is already neutral, and once it gets excited, it can easily again get ionized. Okay. So the way this occurs, one has to, okay, so then there is one reaction, there is a reaction which is, if the important reaction is from n equal to 2 to s, 2p to n equal, so this is the 2 from the 2p state, which is the first excited state of hydrogen atom, to the 1s state. This transition gives rise to, so you have a cascade, as I mentioned, right? It goes to an excited state, and then the electron goes down the energy. So there are various excited states of hydrogen atom, which you all know, given by the Rydberg formula. So when this recombination occurs, the electron first goes to an excited state, and then it slowly cascades down, and finally it goes from the 2p to the, but these excited states, the occupation, the number density of these excited states is extremely small. That I have already shown you from this Saha ionization formula, I have explained to you. Right. So at the temperatures of interest, these excited states, number densities are very small. So if it is in the excited state, it can again easily get ionized. Okay. Now some electrons reach the 2p state, and from there they go to the 1s state. But the photon that is emitted in this can again excite another hydrogen atom from the 1s to the 2p state. So it can again excite another hydrogen atom from the 1s to the 2p state. So then that does not serve, that can again get ionized. It does not serve a purpose, our purpose. Okay. Now some amount can, so this reaction to some extent can contribute to recombination, provided the photon gets redshifted in between emission and absorption. If the photon gets redshifted between emission and absorption, then it no longer has sufficient energy to excite it, and then it is fine. Okay. So some amount of, to some extent, this reaction can lead to recombination, but it is not very effective. One has to consider slower processes. These are fast processes, okay, quite efficient fast processes. One has to consider a slower processes. See, in this process 2p to 1s, there is a change in the angular momentum. So it is electric dipole, there is a change in the electric dipole moment, and it's okay. You can see that there is a change in the angular momentum. This has a particular angular momentum, this has 0 angular momentum, this has 1, 0. Okay. So these processes are quite fast. Now There are slower processes which have to be considered. So, the slow process is where the electron goes to the 2s state, and from 2s it goes to 1s. Okay, such a state is possible if 2 photons are emitted, but the reaction rate for this is much slower than the reaction rate for this, but this reaction is not very effective, so one has to consider this particular process. Okay. So, this process is permitted with the emission of 2 photons. These 2 photons, none of them consider sufficient energy to excite the hydrogen atom again. Okay. So, this process is what is largely responsible for the recombination process. This has to be considered. Okay. And the process itself is quite complicated, not so simple. So, I shall not go into the details of this process. You have to write down all the reaction rates and various consider the details of this whole process. So, I shall not go into those details. Let me show you the results of detailed calculations. So, the results of detailed calculations have been, people have done such calculations and they have been tabulated here. So, this shows you the results of such detailed calculations. These calculations, so this shows you the time, this shows you the temperature, and this shows you the ionization fraction for different values of omega baryon into H square. So, it depends on the omega baryon into H square value also. And the point to note is that the ionization fraction falls drastically at temperatures of around few thousand, 3000 Kelvin, somewhere over there. Okay, it falls. So, it starts off at around at a very high ionization rate and you end up with a low, very small ionization rate. So, these are non-equilibrium calculations. You put in the reaction rates and the expansion of the universe and solve the rate equations for different reactions. Okay. This picture shows you how the ionization fraction falls based on these calculations. Okay, that is a typical picture. So, it is as a function of temperature. So, it is fully ionized at high temperatures and then somewhere between 3000 4000 it falls, and okay, and you are left with. Now, this recombination process is not perfectly efficient. Okay. This recombination process is not perfectly efficient. And at low ionizations, the process becomes very ineffective. So, there will be some amount of electrons always left over. Okay. So, some electrons will survive the recombination process, and the electrons that survive this recombination process are of considerable interest to us. So, there will be some amount of ionized material at the end of this whole thing, and that is of considerable interest. So, the final there are two things it depends on then. The whole thing depends. So, the recombination process depends on two things. One is temperature, it also depends on omega baryon into H square essentially. Okay. And it should be clear by now from our discussion, if you remember what we had discussed for the nucleosynthesis, larger the omega baryon, the more efficient is the conversion to the neutral, because you need the more particles, the reaction will be more efficient. Okay. So, larger the omega baryon, less is the final ionization fraction. So, if you have very small omega baryon H squared, then there will be a large ionization fraction at the end, larger, relatively large. If the omega baryon is small, is large, then there will be a very small ionization fraction at the end. Okay. And people have worked out this in detail, and it finally, let me just give you the final result. The final result is that the ionization fraction is proportional to omega matter h square to the power half divided by omega baryon h square at a fixed temperature. At any temperature this is true. Okay. So, let me just tell you how roughly where, so this you can guess is from the Hubble parameter, the expansion rate. The Hubble parameter has omega matter to the power half. So, and this is the reactions omega baryon h square. Okay. So, this is how what decides this, and the final ionization fraction depends on this combination, and the evolution with temperature also depends on the same combination. Now, this is of particular interest for a reason. Let me explain that to you now. The reason why we are interested in all of this, let me give you the picture, overall picture. So, let me make a plot. I am the observer over here. Let me put everything in our perspective. I am the observer over here. As I go further and further away from me, I am going back in redshift, larger and larger redshift, temperature increases of the CMBR. At a certain temperature, the material in the universe starts, so at a temperature in this region, the material in the universe is all ionized. So, you have electrons, protons over here which are ionized. So, you have free electrons and you have protons and you have the CMBR photons. Now, the photons, we know they travel at the speed of light. So, a photon, say it is traveling like this, it will encounter an electron, and at these temperatures, so we are dealing with temperatures around 4000, 5000, somewhere over there, 4000 over here, or the most important process is the Thomson scattering. Okay. So, there will be a Thomson scattering. You must have all learnt about Thomson scattering in earlier courses. So, there will be Thomson scattering. So, there will be basically two kinds of things. There will be Thomson scattering and Compton scattering. Okay, the Compton scattering occurs if you have very high energy photons. Thomson scattering is more of what you will get when you have low energy photons, right. So, in Thomson scattering the frequency does not change, and you will have Thomson scattering, as a consequence of which what will happen, the direction of the photon is going to get diverted. Okay. And in this ionized plasma, the mean free path of the photon is extremely small. The photon mean free path is extremely small. So, this whole thing is in thermal equilibrium. The photon does not travel a very large distance, it just goes around in a small region, gets kicked around. Now, this plasma which you have, it becomes neutral. So, this is x equal to 1, and you end up in a situation where x is much less than 1. So, what happens is there is some region over here where there is a transition between, so it becomes neutral, and this is around a redshift of 1000, right, z equal temperature of around 3 Kelvin, 3000 somewhere over there. So, redshift of the order of 1000. Now, what happens is once it becomes neutral, this Thomson scattering is no longer there. So, the photons can travel freely. Neutral hydrogen atom can only absorb photons by excitation of electronic excitations essentially, right, or by the hyperfine transition 21 centimeter. Now, so those cross sections, though they are not very important, and they only affect certain specific frequencies. Okay. So, essentially what happens is that once it becomes neutral, the photon can travel freely The mean free path becomes the size of the horizon. There is a very small probability that the photon from here will get scattered by something, because it has become largely neutral. Okay. So we can see the photons from here. So if you trace the photon backwards, the photon that you are receiving, CMBR photon, it has been coming straight towards you. If you trace it backwards, you will find that you can trace its trajectory all the way back until the universe becomes ionized. Once you enter that region, the photon is going to get scattered, and it's like it will become like this, it will go around, get kicked around. Okay. So it becomes optically thick, you cannot see beyond that. This is the furthest that you can see essentially through the CMBR. Before that, the CMBR just gets scattered, kicked around, and you can't really see. Okay, like looking through ground glass. In ground glass, the photon direction gets changed, so you cannot see through the ground glass. The photon will come through, but you cannot see what's there. Similarly, it gets scattered, doesn't get destroyed, doesn't get absorbed, but it just gets scattered, and you really can't see anything through that. Okay, so there is what is called a last scattering surface. This is a surface, it's going to be a sphere around us, where the photon experiences the last scattering. After it experiences the last scattering, it comes free straight away to us. So effectively, it is from that region that we are seeing the photon. Now this is not going to be just one surface, it's going to have a thickness. Because some photon could have got last scattered here, it's a probabilistic process. Okay, some photon would have been scattered here, some elsewhere. So it's a probabilistic process. But this is of great interest, because that is the place from where you are seeing the CMBR coming. Okay. So as far as we are concerned, let me get the picture clear. As far as we are concerned, there is a thickness, there is a shell like this around us of a finite thickness, called the last scattering surface, LS, last scattering surface. Okay. And the photon last got scattered inside this. The photon here doesn't travel far, it just gets kicked around. The photon which was here getting kicked around suddenly finds itself free and it comes straight to us, some photon. Okay. And the last time it got scattered was somewhere in here. Now the way to calculate this is through what is called the opacity. Which is 1 minus exponential minus So let me explain to you what this is. This opacity as a function of temperature gives us the probability that the electron, that the photon that we are dealing, we are asking the question, I am seeing a photon over here. What is the probability that the photon was last scattered over here at a certain temperature? The temperature of the CMBR scales with redshift, we know that. Right? So the question can be equivalently written in terms of redshift. Okay. So the question is, what is the probability that the photon that we are seeing here was scattered at a redshift 0, was last scattered at this temperature? That probability is given by this. Okay, as a function of the temperature. So it is quite obvious from our discussion that the probability should be highest somewhere in the last scattering surface, somewhere over here. Let me explain the various terms over here. So you have to actually integrate from the temperature, from the time corresponding to the temperature that you are interested in. So you have to integrate all the way from here to here. If I ask what's the probability that the photon was last scattered over here, I have to integrate from here to here in this integral. This is the integral over time, and the things that I have to integrate, NE is the electron number density, which changes with time. Sigma T is the Thomson scattering cross section, which has a value 0.665, and there are further decimal places, into 10 to the power minus 24 centimeter square. And c is the speed of light. Okay. So you can appreciate that this is a dimensionless number, and this number has an appreciable value only when the electron, this integral will have an appreciable value only when the electron number density is pretty large. When the electron number density is 0, then the probability is also going to be 0, because this is 1, this is also 1. Okay. Again, okay, so this number, this integral is going to pick up value only when the electron number density becomes large. So this integral is going to pick up value only when you first encounter this region. Again, when you enter into this region, these things will cancel out, and finally you will have a very small value. So one can actually put in these calculations of the ionization fraction into this and calculate this. Okay. Let me show you the results again. So the results have been tabulated for different values of these, involve complicated integrations, you cannot do them here. So the results have been tabulated over here for different values of omega baryon h square. Let me summarize. The whole results can be summarized approximately in this way, that the opacity as a function of temperature is equal to 1 by sigma square root of 2 pi. This is an approximation. Okay. So this can be well approximated by a Gaussian. Okay, so if you plot this opacity as a function of temperature, so the probability that the last scattering occurred, it looks like a Gaussian. And it is peaked somewhere around the last scattering surface, peaked at the last scattering. This is the width of the, you may say, the width of the last scattering surface, but the probability peaks in this region. The probability that it was last scattered falls off, the Gaussian falls off pretty fast. I have not drawn it falling that fast. So the probability that it was last scattered is high in for a temperature range around the temperature of the last scattering surface. Okay, and the values are given over here. I hope you can read them. So these are certain values for omega baryon h square, different 0.1, 0.01, 0.02, 0.03. Okay, these are the values. So it is around 3000 Kelvin. Okay, so you can take note of these values. So these are the values of the TL and sigma. Okay, so this tells us that the photon that we are seeing was last scattered somewhere at a redshift of around 1000. So that is the last scattering surface. After that, the photons don't, let me just briefly conclude this. After that, the photons do not interact much with the material, intervening material, they come straight to us. Okay, the probability that the photon was, but what about the material? Is the material decoupled, totally decoupled from the CMBR? Well, that is not so. Okay, let me explain this to you. So there are these electrons that are left over from the reionization process. These electrons still scatter to a small extent with the CMBR, and this scattering does not affect the CMBR. but it is sufficient to keep the electron temperature. You see, after when these two have decoupled, you would expect the TCMBR to scale as 1 by A, but the electrons and the atoms, they are all non-relativistic particles, so they should scale as 1 by A square. So, if you plot the temperature, okay, so we shall go into this, we shall, I think it is better to stop here now, and we shall just briefly touch upon this in the next lecture before we take up some other topic.